Alrighty then, hello all you subjects of the internet out there, this is the Aromantic Shipper coming at you today with yet another video. So as those of my subscribers watching this have probably noticed, I've been putting out a lot more videos recently on the Avatar franchise, including The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, given the rewrite format that I've been sticking with, and by now I've finished laying out all the rewrites I would have made for the two series. I just want to make clear that when I talk about ways that I think a series could have been better, it's not because I don't think that the original was good. Far from it. The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra are two of my favorite shows of all time, and it's because I have rewatched the two so frequently and watched a bunch of videos on them that I've been able to pick up on some things in hindsight that I think could have been better about them. But I wouldn't really bother trying to rewrite something belonging to a property I didn't love in the first place, because I just wouldn't really care. But with that out of the way, let's get on to the actual topic of this video. Because the Avatar franchise is so beloved and well known, it's not exactly a great surprise that a lot of people are very invested in producing more material based on it in order to capitalize on it. But in my opinion, there has been relatively little success in doing so. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Korra, but I still thought the show was great and had an amazing animation quality. But other than that, the only major piece of media to come out of the franchise has been the extremely underwhelming live-action Shyamalan movie. I mean, personally, I don't think it's as bad as other people do, but then again, I'm a well-known fan of the Star Wars prequels, so what do I know? But the movie was just, so unnecessary, as pretty much all of the material it covered was just done so much better in the show, outside of a few minor changes that I liked. And there is also, of course, the fact that The Last Airbender being a cartoon was what gave it so much charm in the first place, in a way that live action just couldn't replicate. So when I first heard that a new live action Avatar series was going to be coming, I think it was a few years ago maybe, it feels like this thing has been in production for fucking ever, my first thought was just, why? Why are we doing this shit again? What is the purpose? We have the original and it's already a masterpiece. I don't need to see a live action retelling of the entire series. But even so, I kept my hopes up, especially since the original creators of Avatar were coming back to work on it. And I thought that there was no way it could be worse than the Shyamalan movie, and at least it might turn out to be an entertaining, if unnecessary, ride. But of course, as time went on, my hopes kept becoming more and more soured, and with the original Avatar creators jumping ship from the project over creative differences, and sneak peeks hinting at, supposedly going to be a lot of differences from the original, I am about as excited for the Netflix series now as I am excited to rewatch Rise of Skywalker again. I'm just really disappointed because I think the Avatar world is so incredible and fun to experience, and there is so much potential that can be done with it. But it just seems like the people who have the rights to this franchise are determined to keep retreading old ground. I mean, was anyone really asking for another live-action remake of the original series? I mean, I know I wasn't, and I really can't find a single creator on YouTube who actually wanted it either. I mean, the fanbase wants new ideas for the world and the lore of Avatar to be expanded. One of the reasons why I love Legend of Korra so much is that it opened up the lore of the series so much more and really allowed the world of Avatar to develop. It showed the audience an in-depth look at a period of time we hadn't seen before. To keep this franchise fresh, there needs to be more of that, and there is no shortage of ideas to pull from. Honestly, I think it would be great if The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra comics were converted into movie form, as they continue the story forward from their respective TV shows. I mean, the first three Avatar comics, The Promise, The Search, and The Rift, are fantastic in my opinion, though I do have my significant issues with all the Korra and Avatar comics that came after them, and I think some major changes would definitely have to be made for those. Adapting those comics into animated form would give new material for fans to enjoy, a lot of whom, including me until 2 years ago, hadn't read the comic books. Or instead of, or in addition to that, you could do a new series or movies based on the lives of avatars who came before Aang, like Kyoshi, who is a fan favorite, and is already having novels written about her. You can make a series focusing on the stuff that happened after Wan closed the spirit portals and there were a bunch of wars between the bending tribes. That would have been cool as shit to see. There's a world of possibilities just waiting to be explored besides just remaking the original series into live action again. And quite honestly, the one I would be the most excited about to see, as you could have guessed by the title of this video, is another Avatar series taking place after Korra dies. Now, as I said before, I know a lot of people were not huge fans of The Legend of Korra, but despite all its flaws, which I detailed extensively in my rewrite series for it, I still think it was a really great series, and I would absolutely love to see another series in the same vein as it, as while continuations of The Last Airbender or adaptations of the lives of older avatars would be really neat to see, it would just be so amazing to see what happens in the future of the Avatar world, where the audience just has no idea what's actually going to happen, because they haven't seen any of the events that happened afterwards. Granted, by this point, technology would be getting really close to where it is at the real world right now by this point, with the Legend of Korra technology being around the 1920s era. Barring the ridiculous giant mech thing, but it could still work, especially if Korra ended up dying before she ended up getting super old. I don't really think a sequel series with a fire avatar would necessarily work so well, since by that point technology would basically be futuristic, so for all intents and purposes, this would be the last Avatar series we would get chronologically, giving the franchise a good send-off. So with that being said, let's talk about some ideas I would have for this new Avatar series. Of course, this is just my opinion of how I envision a future Avatar series could pan out, so feel free to leave your own ideas in the comments down below. Let's just get into it. I think I've droned on long enough by now. Here are my ideas. So firstly, this future Avatar series would actually feature an evil avatar. And not like Unavatu in Legend of Korra, although I actually don't think that was as dumb as some people say it was, but I mean that the Earth Avatar, who has Rava's light spirit inside them, should be a straight-up villain in the series. I think it would be an incredibly cool idea, as technically speaking, the Avatar has a choice in how to use their powers, and it is entirely possible that a very unstable person could come along, essentially wielding the force of a nuclear warhead. It would also give more credence to Zahir's plan to kill the Avatar in Legend of Korra, as his fears about an Avatar coming along and using their incredible power for harmful purposes would come to fruition. And this would also start up a real conversation among the people in the Avatar world as to whether the Avatar really should exist anymore, and maybe killing them while they are in the Avatar stage is the only way to stop something like this from happening again. As for what the motivations of the Avatar would be, I don't think it would be very compelling if they were just a purely evil bad guy like Ozai was, and although Zuko is an amazing character, obviously, basically copying and pasting his story of just being raised on the wrong side and learning to recognize that fact and turn good over the course of series, wouldn't be that interesting either. So what if this earthbending Avatar was an Eren Yeager type character? Someone ruthless and pragmatic who is brutalized by the cruel world and uses his powers to fight back against and destroy the existing order, and they reject people like the White Lotus and the world nations, telling them what they should be and what they should do, proclaiming that they are free. Maybe their end goal could even be similar to Eren's, with them trying to bring about some sort of spirit apocalypse or something so that only people they deem worthy will survive. And also to save the trees, because villains can care about nature too. Seeing the good guys trying to take down the new Team Avatar, who are the antagonists this time, would lead to some incredibly inventive scenarios, and it would just be so amazing to have everyone try desperately to take down an unrestrained Avatar who's just wrecking everybody's shit. Since this Avatar would only have Korra's memories and experiences, and not those of the other Avatars, they would be nerfed enough to reasonably be able to defeat. However, I wouldn't just introduce the new Avatar right away, and instead have the entire first season be spent wondering where they are, and who they are, and what their motivations are, with a bunch of characters in the world trying to locate them, with them finally being revealed in the finale. Speaking of which, though, if the Avatar is going to be a villain in this new series, who is going to be the protagonist? Well, I don't know if there necessarily needs to be one central protagonist, as the show could focus broadly on a whole host of compelling characters. But I think it would be pretty cool for the pseudo-main character of the series to be a nonbender, as a contrast to the antagonist who can bend all the elements. They would be a person who, despite not having any special powers or important lineage, or even particularly impressive fighting skills, would prove to be the most useful out of the cast by using their intelligence, persistence, and quick thinking, along with the technological advancements of the world, to solve all kinds of difficult situations. Basically, he's like Iron Man, but poor and less confident. Also, this new Avatar series would focus much more on the spirits. I've always felt like the spirits and the spirit world are one of the most interesting aspects of the Avatar universe, but they were pretty underutilized. In The Last Airbender, the spirits were pretty much just background stuff, and although the spirits did get more focus in Season 2 of The Legend of Korra, there was a lot of missed potential there too. In this new Avatar series, the conflict and cooperation with the human and spirit worlds would take center stage, and we would get to see a lot more of the spirit world than we have before, with characters taking long journeys into it and meeting all kinds of colorful characters there, Perhaps with one character even deciding they want to stay there and using Janora's spirit projection technique thingy to still interact with the physical world that way. The series could focus on more spirits who bear resentment towards humans, and there could be the potential for some legitimately really creepy horror moments, since ghosts basically exist in this world now, and can go anywhere, including under a person's bed. More horror, please. I am not a huge fan of horror movies, but I love it as a subgenre. The series could also show expeditions into the spirit world, with humans trying to scientifically study what it is and how it works exactly, but being completely perplexed. Also, since technology is catching up to the real world by now, putting major focus on how different portions of society interact with the spirit world would make the setting feel very different and unique. Some people are antagonistic with the spirits and see them as pets, which causes a lot of problems, while others try to work around them and become more attuned to their own spirituality. You could even have spirit and human partnerships, with some humans temporarily allowing their spirit companions to fuse with them to make them more powerful in a fight. Fusion, ha! And you realize if a feline spirit fuses with a woman, her body would take on the characteristics of a cat over time, meaning we would finally get anime cat girls in Avatar. I'm a genius! Also, this could even serve as an explanation for why some animals in the Avatar universe are crossed with other animals. Spirit fusions. There is just so much cool stuff you can do with the spirits being an actual part of the Avatar world, with all the political and societal implications that weren't really touched upon that much in The Legend of Korra. Also, the spirit weapons that Kuvira made are now technology that has been spread all over the world, and they are basically nukes in this world, with the major nations not declaring full-scale war on each other for fear of mutually assured destruction. And we would see how using those weapons affects the spirits around them. And of course, we gotta talk about the lion turtles. The lion turtles are one of the coolest aspects of the Avatar world, and I wish we saw so much more of them. In the original series, there was only one offhanded mention of the lion turtles until one showed up in Deus Ex Machina, the finale. And while it was cool to learn more about their history in The Legend of Korra, I needed more. So in this series, we would once again get to learn more about the lion turtles, what they really are, where they came from, and the last surviving lion turtle that Aang met should definitely make a reappearance and try some shit. Also, it would be so cool if, some people came across the giant skeleton of a lion turtle buried in the sands and then sell bone and shell fragments to people as charms to keep away the spirits, considering how the presence of the lion turtles protected humans from spirits in the past. Let's talk about the world and conflict of the new series. The new time period the series is set in would have the major nations of the world constantly fearful and untrusting of one another, but also trying to not to go to full-scale war. The Earth Kingdom has now broken up and become the Earthlands, with a lot of independent smaller nations and some large and powerful ones, like the nation of Ba Sing Se, which despite people's best efforts is still an authoritarian hellhole after 3 seasons by now, and is allied with other authoritarian nations like the Northern Water Tribe against democracies like the United Republic, the Fire Nation, and the Southern Water Tribe. The larger, more powerful nations wage proxy war on smaller nations that don't have spirit weapons, leaving large-scale devastation and a lot of corpses. And for clarification, the earthbending avatar would be from one of these smaller nations, which would give them their experiences with the cruelty of this world. Actually, maybe they would be more like a Pain-type character instead of an Eren Yeager-type character. Anyway, also we would see the greater effects of the cultural diffusion of the modern world, with nations losing their identity as Fire Nation or Water Nation or Earth Nation. And there would be great conflict over this, as there would be many arguing that it is the natural order of things for the different bloodlines and cultures to remain separate. The air nomads would also be grappling with what their place is in the world, with their culture going through many changes, becoming more decentralized, and many treasured traditions being less and less remembered. The Air Nation is nothing like what it was before Sozin's Comet, and many of the so-called air nomads don't even follow the principles of vegetarianism or pacifism. And we see how the current leaders are attempting to deal with that. Another aspect of this new series that would come into major focus would be the Fire Nation. Honestly, it's pretty ridiculous how in The Legend of Korra the Fire Nation barely got any focus whatsoever. I mean, I get it. You know, how in the original series there was so much focus on the Fire Nation. But yes, since there won't be a Fire Avatar series after this one, there needs to be much more focus placed upon this location, because there are a lot of really interesting things you could explore here. I said before how the Fire Nation has become a democracy now, but the monarchy is still there, though it has lost most of its real power. However, there are divisions within the Fire Nation, with many being angry and bitter over the fact that the Fire Nation is shrinking in relevance and is weak compared to the mighty empire it once was. So now there is a large resurgent fascist element wanting to return things back to the way they were, with the monarchy becoming a symbol of the old Fire Nation empire and many in the royal family showing support to these movements. I'm of course implementing a lot of real-world conflicts going on in the modern day into my Avatar series ideas, but that shouldn't feel too out of place, as both The Legend of Korra and The Last Airbender have always pulled from real-world conflicts and events as influence for the story. And speaking of pulling from real-world conflicts and events, I know this might be a little on the nose, but I think it would be fucking hilarious if the new president of the United Republic in this series was a Donald Trump knockoff. I mean, I am on the record saying that Donald Trump feels like a cartoon character who was brought into the real world. I mean, honestly, he acts just as ridiculous and goofy as someone like Varric did in The Legend of Korra. It would certainly make for a more interesting character than Raiko did, who is kind of just portrayed as your standard run-of-the-mill politician, and I think there would actually be a lot of great potential to see this character grow from just being a goofy comic relief in the first season to becoming much more threatening, unstable, and dangerous as time goes on while still remaining a dumbass, just like what happened with the real Trump, only this time, what if the coup doesn't actually fail and this character actually gains enough support to usurp democracy, showing how democracy dies not with a bang, but with a comedy act. Perhaps a controversial idea, but both conservatives and liberals were fucking obsessed with Trump during his presidency, so you can't tell me it wouldn't be engaging to watch. Also, the bender versus non-bender conflict that was focused on in Season 1 of The Legend of Korra should get more focus here in this new Avatar series. There never really was a proper conclusion to it, and as with many of the plot lines introduced in The Legend of Korra, it set up the potential for a great conflict, but never quite followed through on it. In this future Avatar series, it would, of course, be an ever-present theme, with the main character being a non-bender. Through their point of view, the audience would see the ongoing struggle between the two groups, and there being progress to mitigate the inequalities between benders and non-benders, but many people still seeing benders as more special than other people, and non-benders feeling inferior. While at the same time, many benders are also feeling disgruntled, as the sacred arts of bending are now mostly being used for menial tasks like cleaning out pools and paving roads. At the same time, some benders would be protesting the fact that they are required for military service while non-benders are not. There are just a lot of more interesting places you could take that conflict that weren't originally touched upon in Korra. Let's also talk about the pacing and structure of this series. I think 70 episodes, clocking in around 30 minutes each, would be enough to flesh out all the ideas I'm talking about. The show would be split up into 14 episode seasons, with the entire season being released in full all at once in each year, which I think would be a good distribution model considering how I would pace this season. Avatar The Last Airbender had a largely episodic pacing, and when The Legend of Korra came around, it became more serialized. I'm currently in the midst of watching Game of Thrones for the first time, and it has a very unique method of storytelling, where episodes will usually deal with multiple plotlines taking place all across the world that are setting up to one day connect with one another, and I think it would be a really cool idea to do this with the new Avatar series, seeing everything going on in the world at once. Of course, there would be some episodes that might slow down and focus on only one or two plotlines, but if it's done well, it could really work in the series' favor and make the world feel incredibly large in scope, with every plotline and character joining together and intersecting in the final season. Now let's talk about how adult this series would be. Though it handled adult themes, Avatar The Last Airbender was in the end a kids show created for kids, with a cast of kid characters, and I like that The Legend of Korra was willing to age with its audience, having a cast of teenage and young adult characters, and dealing with more complicated subject matters and having darker themes. In this new Avatar series, most of the cast would just be adults, and the series would be more violent and mature than the previous Avatar series. Obviously, I'm not talking about anything gratuitous, like blood and guts being spilled everywhere, F-bombs coming out of the wazoo, and full uncensored nudity, which would just be unnecessary and feel out of place in this franchise, but with the lack of restrictions that were placed upon Avatar during its run on Nickelodeon, we would get to see actual blood, on-screen deaths, no more of that jet nonsense, some more sexual elements, and minor swearing, like the words ass and damn. Or, I don't know, honestly, I think it would be pretty funny if, even with the more relaxed ratings, all of the characters just said things like monkey feathers and stuff like that as swears. Outside of one scene near the end where a usually calm and collected character has all his plans completely ruined for the first time and then just drops like 10 consecutive F-bombs out of nowhere, which would be the only swears in the series ever. That would be hilarious. Also, there's a reason why the Naruto series didn't have guns despite having technologies like wireless radio and televisions, because they're broken as fuck in a fantasy setting, so there would still be no gun technology used in this series. Also, the show coming out nowadays would give it the chance to showcase more LGBTQ representation, even past just gay and bisexual, and possibly even having asexual and trans and non-binary characters. The Legend of Korra was really a game changer in terms of LGBTQ representation, but compared to some other things we've gotten out of kids shows now, Korra and Asami's relationship was really not built up or focused on at all, and it would be very cool if this new Avatar series much more obviously supported the spectrum of sexuality and gender identity with its characters, with perhaps the main character themselves even being gay and it being treated as a totally normal and natural thing. Another thing that this new Avatar series would of course have to showcase is new bending abilities. I really like how The Legend of Korra took the bending abilities in The Last Airbender and just ran with the possibilities, fleshing out things like lava bending and blood bending, and really pushing the limits of what elements like air can do. So yeah, in this Avatar series, the bending elements would be explored even further. For example, it could introduce a deadly water bending ability called steam bending, where a person is able to heat the temperature of steam immensely, and there could be a good guy bloodbender who is able to end a battle peacefully in seconds when the full moon comes out, showing how bloodbending could be used for good. You could introduce an airbender assassin who bends colorless, odorless poison into someone's lungs, and an airbender who's able to create minor storms and weather changes. You could introduce a Gaara knockoff character who can only bend sand and not solid earth, so they carry around a gourd of sand everywhere to ground up the materials around them, or an earthbender who essentially lives as a mole burrowing underground and attacking the surface above without warning. Which, come to think about it, why isn't that a tactic that more earthbenders use in the Avatar universe? It seems pretty effective. There could be a firebender who creates massive explosions by continually charging up a fire blast for several minutes. The mechanics of combustion bending could be further explored, and there could be a firebender who has damaged lungs and so can't create fire very well, and can only manipulate fire from their external environment. Which I gotta admit is kind of a cool idea that Shyamalan had. There's just so many possibilities you can do, in addition to all the cool spirity powers you could also utilize. Speaking of possibilities, Avatar in space! Okay, don't laugh, but seriously, by the time The Legend of Korra rolled out, people were already flying around the air in planes. By now they could surely have space shuttle technology. I don't think it would be necessarily jumping the shark to have astronauts in Avatar, and I think it would actually be really interesting to see how people's bending would work, or rather wouldn't work, in space. Maybe earthbenders become less and less powerful when there is less gravity, while airbenders would become more powerful, and waterbenders become less powerful the farther away they are from the ocean, while firebenders become more powerful because the sun's rays aren't being blocked by the atmosphere. You could have a really cool and intense action scene in outer space with the benders trying to make the best of what limited elements they have available to them, while trying not to get their spacesuits damaged. I don't know, maybe it's stupid, but I think it would be really cool. Another aspect I would also introduce in this new Avatar series would be a major natural disaster event. The franchise has showcased natural disasters before, like that meteor that starts a big forest fire in Season 3 of The Last Airbender, but things like that aren't necessarily big plot points in the show and are solved very easily. All of the inciting incidents in the show are human-based or spirit-based, like all of the major world-changing events that happen in each time period, like Sozin wiping out the air nomads, Aang defeating the Fire Lord, and Korra choosing to leave the spirit portals open. They're all the result of human choices. But what if in this series that isn't the case, and instead there is a massive asteroid or comet strike that causes chaos all over the Earth, and results in tons of smaller natural disasters like tsunamis, earthquakes, and extreme weather? It would just be incredibly interesting to see the world of Avatar and the people in it try to deal with massive disasters like these, and I think it would lead to some incredibly interesting scenarios. So now let's talk about some flashbacks. The Last Airbender had them, The Legend of Korra had them, and this series would too. Obviously, it would be necessary to fill in some of the gaps between the previous series, The Legend of Korra, and this one, and I think that the two most important ones would be those relating to the Avatar. While overall, The Legend of Korra definitely didn't have a main cast as engaging as the one in The Last Airbender, so I don't really think it's that necessary to focus a ton on what Mako and Bolin, for example, have been up to over the decades. I honestly found Korra herself to be a more interesting character than Aang was, and it would be really cool to see in an episode what she actually got up to before she died through the new Avatar's memories, seeing her try to live her life and help people, seeing her relationship with Asami develop, and her trying to fight back against homophobia around the world. And we would see how she died, with either her getting killed by some kind of terrorist cell or dying from sustained injuries she developed from the mercury poison. In regards to the current Avatar, their backstory would of course be incredibly important, and we would see it getting revealed over the course of the series as the villain Avatar's motivations become less mysterious. Korra would also get to play an incredibly large role in the characterization of the new Avatar post-mortem, with her being the only past life they are able to talk to and trying to steer them away from the path they are on, but them of course trying to ignore her and not wanting anything to do with her advice, but still feeling her pull whenever they try to enter the Avatar state. There can, of course, be other flashbacks shown throughout the show explaining things, but I think that the developments of the world that have taken place since the previous series could be explained naturally by simply showing rather than telling. Now, finally, as we get to the end of this video, let's talk about how the series should end. The Avatar would serve as the final villain to defeat in this Avatar series, as they start out at the beginning gathering forces and building influence, while being initially pushed to the side in favor of other antagonists in the first 2 seasons anyway, similar to Daenerys' character in Game of Thrones. And as for how to actually resolve this conflict in the end, and whether or not they should die, or be redeemed, or the Avatar cycle should officially come to a permanent end, I can't really say. This video isn't me writing an entirely new Avatar series, it's really just me giving some ideas that I think would be cool if they were used in a future Avatar series. I couldn't possibly think of an ending for a series I don't even have a concrete picture of in my head, but I do think I have an idea of what the tone of the final capping off for this Avatar trilogy would be. The main theme of The Last Airbender was hope, and how victory can be won even if the odds seem impossible, and the series pretty much had a completely satisfying fairy tale happy ending. The Legend of Korra subverted that fairy tale ending by showing how there is always a new problem or threat to face after the old one, but in the end came to the conclusion that even though life will beat you down over and over again, you can still come out stronger and wiser for it. Perhaps it's my nihilism creeping into this video, but I would have the main theme of this new series be hopelessness, as many of the characters feel as though the world they are living in is going crazy and teetering on the brink of inevitable destruction, and they don't feel like they can do anything about it, and the ending of the series would be bittersweet, as although the main bad guy is defeated, there are still a myriad of other pressing problems and conflicts yet to solve. But the characters end up taking Iroh's advice that he gave to Zuko. Destiny is a funny thing. You never know where you are going to end up, but if you keep an open mind and an open heart, your destiny will reveal itself to you one day. Also, did I forget to mention that Iroh will be showing up in this series, and so will Zuko, who will meet him in the spirit world, meaning those two will be the only characters that appear in all 3 series. My heart. Love those 2 characters so much. Alright, so those were my ideas I have had swirling around in my brain for a possible future Avatar series for a while now, and I just wanted to get them out there. I just love this franchise to death, and I want to see more of it, because I realize just how much potential there is left unexplored. Apparently brand new animated Avatar content is going to be coming to Paramount Plus in the future, and I don't quite know what it will be, but I'm still incredibly excited that we are finally getting some new animated Avatar content after all these years, and I'm still holding out hope that one day we might get that Legend of Korra sequel series. But anyway, this has been the Aromantic Shipper. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and this has been the Aromantic Shipper, which I just said, but I'm saying it again anyway, and I will see you all later. And as always, remember, just because you can't feel love doesn't mean you shouldn't want other people to. Bye.